Self-help has a blind spot, a massive one. It teaches you to improve, wake up earlier, build better habits, develop discipline. And none of that is wrong. But it skips something that actually determines how far you go. It never teaches you how power works between people, not because the authors don't know, because the moment you write that book honestly, it makes people uncomfortable, so they leave it out. They give you the clean version, the version that sells. Anime didn't care about selling you a clean version, that's the difference. Self-improvement and power are not the same pursuit. Most people treat them as if they are. That is the mistake. Improvement is internal. You get better at something. Power is relational. It exists between people, in how they perceive you, where they position you, and how they respond to you when you walk into a room. You can spend years getting genuinely better at things, sharper, more disciplined, more capable, and still find that none of it is translating into anything real. That is not a discipline problem. That is a comprehension problem. You are playing one game while the actual game runs alongside it, and nobody told you it existed. There is a belief that runs through almost every self-help book ever written. It goes like this: get good enough at something, and the world will recognize it. Work hard, build skill, earn respect, gain influence. Clean, linear, fair. That model works in certain environments. Classrooms, structured jobs where performance is measured clearly. Places where the rules are enforced and the playing field is level. Most of life is not that. In most real environments, workplaces, social hierarchies, business, relationships, two things are running at the same time. There is what you actually are, your competence, your discipline, your output. And there is what people believe you are, your reputation, your presence, your positioning in the room. Self-help trains the first thing, almost exclusively. It treats the second thing as a natural byproduct. Do the work, and perception will follow. It doesn't always follow, and when it doesn't, the people who built their entire identity around merit are left confused, often resentful, watching someone less capable move faster, get more, lead more, and having no framework to explain why. That confusion is not a personal failure. It is a gap in what they were taught. Think about the most competent person you know, not the most successful, the most genuinely capable. Now think about whether their life actually reflects that. For most people, there is a gap there, a real one, someone who should be further ahead. Maybe that person is them. That gap exists because the world does not run on a single layer. There is the functional layer, what people can actually do. And there is the social layer, what people believe about them, how they are perceived inside a hierarchy, whether they are seen as someone worth following or someone to be managed. The person who gets promoted is not always the most capable. The founder who raises money is not always building the best product. The person who leads the room is not always the most intelligent in it. This is not unfair in the way people think it is. It is not corruption. It is something more fundamental. Human beings do not process each other as data. They process each other as signals, and signals can be shaped. The people who understand this are not manipulating the system. They are playing the full game. Everyone else is playing half of it and blaming the system when they lose. Consider what actually made Light Yagami dangerous. Not the Death Note, not the intelligence, not the strategy sessions with L. What made him structurally difficult to stop was simpler than any of that. He understood that what people believe about you is a resource, something that can be built deliberately, maintained carefully, deployed at the right moment. He engineered an identity, the cooperative student, the model son, the person whose guilt was structurally unthinkable to everyone around him. He did not just move through the world, he designed how the world read him. That is not a story about genius. That is a story about someone who understood the perception game completely, while everyone hunting him was focused entirely on the competence game. The mechanism is the point, not the character. This is not a new observation. It is not even a modern one. Machiavelli made the same argument 500 years ago, not as a villain's handbook, but as a clear-eyed look at how power actually operates between people. His argument was this: a leader who is genuinely good, but perceived as weak, will lose. Consistently, structurally, to a leader who is less virtuous but perceived as strong. Perception is not a supplement to power. In most real situations, it is power. The prince who waits for his merit to be recognized is not patient. He is naive. And naivety in a competitive environment is just slow-motion defeat. Self-help is the naive position dressed up as wisdom. It assumes the environment rewards goodness and effort automatically. Machiavelli assumed the environment rewards positioning. The historical record backs the second assumption far more than the first. So here is the system. Two games are always running at the same time. The competence game, how good you actually are, and the perception game, what people believe about you, how you are positioned relative to others in the room. Most people only know one game is happening. They train for it obsessively, they get genuinely good, and they cannot understand why the results do not follow. The people who move through the world with real leverage understand both games are running, and they play accordingly, not by being fake, not by performing something they are not, but by understanding that competence without positioning is invisible, and invisible competence does not change anything. You can be the most capable person in the room. If no one believes it, if the room has not been given a reason to believe it, it does not matter. The room will respond to what it believes, not to what is true. That is not cynical. That is just how human social systems work, and pretending otherwise does not change it. It just leaves you less equipped to operate inside it. This channel is not about self-improvement in the way you have seen it before. It is not about waking up earlier. It is not about morning routines. It is not about habits. Those things exist. They are fine. They are not what this is. This is about understanding the full game, the psychological layer underneath behavior, the social mechanics underneath relationships, the perception dynamics underneath competence. Anime has been exploring these ideas seriously for decades, through characters written without the moral sanitization that makes most self-help comfortable and useless. That is the lens this channel is going to use. Not because anime is the point, but because it is one of the few places that was willing to show you how power actually works, without flinching. The question is not whether any of this is fair. It isn't always. The question is whether you are going to keep operating as if merit alone determines outcomes, and keep getting the results that come with that assumption. Or whether you are going to start understanding what is actually happening. That is the only real choice here.